Segment takes me up along the ridge of the South Ridge of Big Bear Valley. We're on a 2N10. You can see Moon Ridge is 7 miles to the east. Lodgepole Pine is 1 mile. And I'm here with David Yagi. Hi, David.
Hey, Ron. How are you?
Oh, good. Now, the reason we're here is the Forest Service has done a magnificent job creating shaded fuel breaks along this side.
Correct. This is for educational purposes for the people of Big Bear Lake. The area right adjacent to the city of Big Bear Lake, for about 300 yards, there's a shaded fuel break there. It's pretty much completed all the way around the edge of the community of Big Bear Lake and Big Bear City.
Right.
And so the second phase was to conduct a skyline fuel break, which is up at the top of the mountain, and that's where we're at today, and that's called the Skyline Shaded Fuel Break. And so what we're going to show everyone is the magnificent job that the Forest Service has done on creating that shaded fuel break, and the reason for that and the need for that is so as a fire may progress out of the backside of the Santa Ana River Basin, that we have the potential to be able to stop it at the top of the mountain, and at least if we can't, keep it to the ground so that we have a chance of knocking it down.
That's great.
And further protecting the communities of the Big Bear Valley.
Sure. It's working.
I think so, and I think what we're going to show people is, as it starts right here, how far it actually goes, so that they can get a sense of comfort that there's a lot of people doing a tremendous amount of work for the communities of the Big Bear Valley to make them safe.
That's for sure. Let's move on.
Okay.
Well, David, we're about a mile down from where we started at 2N10, 2N11, and you can see what they've done here. Look at this. A lot of the manzanita has been cleared and all of the ground cover.
Right, and then all the trees have been limbed up off the ground as well. And this is a big stand of trees. But this is kind of what we've seen for the last mile, is that this allows firefighting crews to be able to lay down a line of Phos-Chek, get in here with hand crews and mechanized equipment to be able to kind of stop the fire as it progresses out of the backside of the Santa Ana River Basin. And so this is just one point. We're going to continue to keep on going and just show people various examples of the shaded fuel break.
Sure.
That was put in for their safety.
Now they limb up, what, 6 to 8 feet?
6, 8 feet. Yeah, that's exactly what the Forest Service standard is here. The Jeffrey pines kind of self-prune even a higher amount. So they're, when they get older, you know, all their branches and limbs are usually eliminated much higher than just even 6 to 8 feet. So.
Right. Great example. Now this is a stand of really young pines.
Right, and so what they've done is they've limbed them up, about 1/3 to a half of the height of the crown of the trees, and that's exactly what our standard is within the city of Big Bear Lake. We always ask people to leave 2/3 of the tree's crowns in place for proper transpiration of the tree. And but you can see if a fire came through here, we're trying to make these younger trees more fire safe so they'll survive a fire. They've also, if there are an overabundance of trees, they've thinned out some of these. And this shaded fuel break is about 1.5 miles away from where the starting point was, which was 2N11, 2N10. And it looks pretty good, even up on this hillside.
Sure does.
And you know, when you look at that, you're going to say, you know, if fire gets in there, it's going to be hard to kind of progress through it. It's probably going to just die, drop to the ground, and that's our hope, that we'll be able to hold it right there. And if not, then it'll build up on the backside.
Right.
But our hope is we'll be able to hold it right here.
Good.
And the Forest Service is doing a great job of doing this.
Well, they are. Boy, look at that. Look at that San Gorgonio area. Really neat. So that's the Santa Ana River Basin down there, where Highway 38 comes up.
Right. And that's if a fire comes out of the Santa Ana River Basin, this is where the Skyline fuel break is. And as you can see, you know, the fire is going to be able to build up with all this vegetation in the manzanita. But then as it continues up to the top of the mountain, The thought is that it will be able to, by creating this shaded fuel break, drop it to the ground. And what a shaded fuel break is, it leaves the trees in place, but it limbs it up 6 to 8 feet off the ground, which is exactly what we're asking people to do around our own community, so that the trees and vegetation can survive a fire. And as you can see, this whole area where all the trees have been limbed up off the ground about 6 to 8 feet, and the fire would transmit through here, drop to the ground, stay on the ground, not get back up into the trees. So we're going to have all this tree stand will typically survive the fire, and that's what we found out last summer in the Angora fire up at Lake Tahoe. All the trees and the shaded fuel break survived.
Wow. This is almost like just a fire break. The shaded fuel break is a fire break.
It is, but it's a one, instead of just totally denuding that ground, we're able to keep the trees alive through that, where it's kind of a shaded environment, and it doesn't totally get down to bare mineral soil.
Sure. And now we're about a little over 2 miles from where we started at 2 and 10, 2 and 11.
Correct.
Boy, it goes all the way to the top of the mountain.
Yeah, they've done a great job of really trying to protect the forest as well as the communities of the Big Bear Valley.
Right. You know, it still makes the forest beautiful, even though they're all limbed up and...
Well, it is certainly going to increase the survivability of these trees if a fire does come up here. And we're across the road from the Penny Pines plantation, which is here on the Skyline Trail, where they actually have planted trees, and they're all limbed up off the ground because, you know, if you planted trees, you'd want to assure their survivability in a fire.
Sure.
So this is a beautiful area. This shows, you know, how trees can still survive by limbing up and treating them, and making sure that communities are safe in the all-in-one swoop.
Well, have they done a great job? We can just swing around and just look at. You still see the forest for the trees, even though they're limbed up. And a lot of the ground covering is down. If the fires really lay down around the ground covering and not get up into the crown, it's when they get into the crown is when they really get dangerous, doesn't it?
Well,
the crown fires.
It makes it more difficult to extinguish a crown fire, and at the same time, you can rest assured if you have a fire in the crowns of the trees, that's when the trees are going to die. So by keeping it on the ground, actually the trees have a greater chance of surviving the fire.
Right. Well, David, a perfect example of limbing up.
Exactly, and he did a great job, and as you can see as you limb up, you know, he left about a 1/2 inch to an inch stub on the tree, and the rest of it in the tree will grow and encapsulate that 1/2 inch to an inch.
Uh-huh.
We ran into the crews that are creating the Skyline shaded fuel brake, and so we asked them just to do this as an example and show what people do. And the first thing that they do is limb up, and then they come back and then they take those limbs and mulch that and or the other areas. So this is a great example of the shaded fuel brake, and we're now about 5.5 miles from where we started.
Wow, all the way across. Well, this is a ribbon up there. Let's go up and look at that. What's that?
That's the masticator.
Ah.
We can cut it.
Wow, that's the fighting end of this.
Yeah, that's the one that gets to chop up a lot of the ground fuels in the shaded fuel brake, and it's a pretty powerful piece of equipment.
Well, David, we've come over 8 miles, and we've seen a lot of wonderful, wonderful work.
And where we're ending is where the shaded fuel brake right next to the city boundaries is, and it's about 300 yards wide. And this is so that we can protect the homes. And the fire will drop to the ground in here. And we're up in Upper Moon Ridge, right off of Club View. And there were an area of about 2 miles out of that 8, Ron, that still has to be done. But as what we saw, but for the most part, it's a work in progress. In many of the areas, it's completed. The Skyline shaded fuel brake. We do need to mention that the crews asked us, some of the equipment can be unsafe. So, try not to bother them as they're doing the work so they can get the work done as quickly as possible. Right. But it was really neat to see all the equipment that was in place and that they were working on that Skyline fuel brake to help protect our community. That's for sure. Well, it's working. Do anything to keep the fire from really getting down into the valley. Exactly. Then from there, we hope that they'll still continue to work on thinning out the forest between the top of the mountain and the community. That needs to be done. There's too much dead material in there, too much congestion of trees. Right. And there's funding. Hopefully, they'll get funding for it. But that's their problem right now, is that they don't have enough funding for that. But if we were able to complete all that, then I think it's safe to say that we would be, as a community, much safer off. You betcha. And there's more programs coming up we're going to do more segments on in the future. Exactly. We're going to talk about the home ignition zone, and that's how people can truly do just a few minor things around their home to help protect themselves, and we're going to talk about that in future segments. Very good. Thanks. We've been touring with David Yagi, Fire Fuels Program Coordinator for the City of Big Bear Lake, Big Bear Fire Department. Thanks. Gosh, that's a long title. Thanks, David, for all you're doing. Oh, you're welcome. And we're just glad that we can provide this information to the people. And as Smokey says, only you can prevent forest fires. Leave it there. Thanks, David. You're welcome. Well, that's it, folks. That concludes this segment here. We hope that's been very educational for you, and to show you the major amount of work, the millions of dollars being put into shaded fuel brakes to protect Big Bear Valley. So that's it. Now don't go away. I'll be back right after these messages from my sponsors.